This is Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa. The story of resurgent and burgeoning Africa is here, only on the Pulse of Africa channel. Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa.
Hello, I'm Tansai Gabiao, your host for the news this hour. Stay tuned. We'll start with Somalia. Mogadishu witnessed a historic milestone on 25th of December 2025 as more than 500,000 residents voted in the capital's first direct municipal elections in over 5 decades. The polls are widely seen as a critical step towards Somalia's planned national elections in 2026. According to the National Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, 1,604 candidates from 20 political parties contested 390 seats across Mogadishu's district councils. Polling stations opened early and operated throughout the day under heightened security, with results expected to be announced on Friday. National Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission chairperson Abdikarim Ahmed Ashan praised the peaceful conduct of voting across the Banadir region, describing the elections as an important move toward rebuilding Somalia's democratic culture and advancing decentralized governance. President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed described the vote as a milestone in Mogadishu's recovery and the strengthening of state institutions. In a televised address, he said the elections reflected a level of stability unseen for decades and urged citizens to remain active in shaping the nation's political future. Security agencies deployed extensive measures across the capital, including an overnight curfew to prevent disruptions amid concerns over possible attacks by the Al-Shabaab militant group. Reports indicated that voting proceeded largely without incident. Despite the calm, the elections were not without controversy. Several opposition parties boycotted the process, alleging irregularities in the voter registration and transparency. Through observers noted that the vote still represents progress toward more inclusive representation. The chairperson of the African Union Commission, Mohamed Ali Youssef, congratulated the Somali people on the orderly conduct of the elections, calling them an important initial step in strengthening participatory governance and reaffirming the AU's continued support for Somalia's peace and stability. The Polyhali Dam project in Lesotho has reached a key milestone with the completion of a full section filling to its design elevation of 1,977 meters, equivalent to a dam height of 65 meters. Announced on the 6th of December 2025, the achievement marks the transition to the project's peak construction phase. The dam, built by the Power Construction Corporation of China, is a central component of the Phase 2 of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project, a long-standing binational partnership between Lesotho and South Africa aimed at improving regional water security and energy supply. Located in Mokotolong district, the project was marked by a site visit from government officials, traditional leaders, and members of parliament, alongside representatives of the Lesotho Highlands Development Authority. Officials described the milestone as a major step in Lesotho's national and regional development. Once completed, the Polyhali Dam will divert water from the Senku River to South Africa's Vaal River system, strengthening water supply for Gauteng province while supporting hydropower generation in Lesotho. Observers say the project highlights effective regional cooperation and international partnership while stressing the need for continued focus on environmental management, transparency, and community benefits as construction processes. The Nigerian government raised 6.10 trillion naira from the domestic bond market in the first half of 2025 to finance its fiscal deficit, while privatization proceeds contributed to 64.92 billion naira, according to the second quarter 2025 budget performance report. The report shows Nigeria's total fiscal deficit stood at 5.70 trillion naira in the first 6 months of the year, below budget estimates, but highlighting continued reliance on domestic borrowing rather than asset sales. In the second quarter alone, a fiscal deficit of 2.66 trillion naira was financed mainly through 2.80 trillion naira in domestic borrowing, with only 7.76 billion naira realized from privatization proceeds. Although the deficit was 24.54% below the portrayed quarterly budget projection and the deficit to GDP ratio remained within 3% ECOWAS threshold, analysts warned that heavy local borrowing could crowd out private sector credit and raise interest rates. The Budget Office noted that debt servicing remains high, with 4.44 trillion naira spent in the second quarter, and stressed that stronger revenue mobilization, accelerated privatization, and fiscal reforms are needed to ease borrowing pressures despite improved economic growth of 4.23%. Ethiopian Airlines has announced plans to introduce 2 new international routes in 2026, marking another milestone in its long-term expansion strategy focused on network growth, fleet modernization, and infrastructure development. Speaking in an exclusive interview with Pulse of Africa, Group Chief Executive Officer Mesfin Tasso said the airline is steadily expanding its global presence. Under the current expansion phase, Ethiopian Airlines has planned 4 new international destinations, 3 of which are already in operation. The 4th route, connecting Addis Ababa to Lyon, France, is scheduled to launch in 2026, pending final market evaluations. In addition, the carrier plans to begin new service to Saudi Arabia in February 2026. Once launched, the route will become Ethiopian Airlines' 5th destination in the kingdom, further strengthening air links between Africa and the Middle East.
During our fiscal year that began in July of 2025 and that ends in 2026, June, we planned to open 4 new destinations. And we have already opened 3 of them. And the 4th one is to Lyon, a city called Lyon in France. We are trying to get the traffic right to begin flying to Lyon. That we expect to happen in 2026. We have found out that there is one city, Saudi Arabia, where we can fly, and we are going to start a new route to our 5th destination in Saudi Arabia in February of 2026.
Beyond network expansion, Mesfin Tasso emphasized that enhancing customer experience remains a key priority for the airline. As part of this effort, Ethiopian Airlines has recently opened a new premium lounge offering modern amenities and improved comfort to meet growing passenger demand. These developments are supported by a robust fleet expansion program. Ethiopian Airlines currently operates more than 167 aircrafts and has approximately 124 aircrafts on order from Boeing and Airbus, including firm orders and purchase rights.
Ethiopian Airlines has a business class lounge and premium lounge, which it provides service to its loyal customers today. But the existing lounges became too small because the number of our passengers has increased and is increasing year on year since recently. That is why we built this lounge. This lounge is very modern, comfortable, and luxurious, and it will delight our customers, encouraging them to continue flying with Ethiopian Airlines.
The additional aircraft will enable the airline to open new routes, increase flight frequencies, and enhance service quality. The airline is also making significant investments in infrastructure, including the construction of the new Bishoftu International Airport. Once completed, the facility is expected to boost capacity and operational efficiency, positioning Ethiopian Airlines for global, all-rounded acceptance. Moving on to business headlines, Zimbabwe's economy grew by 9.64% year on year in the third quarter of 2025, according to the Zimbabwe National Statistics Agency. This marks a sharp rise from the 2.28% growth recorded in the same period in 2024, signaling a notable economic rebound. Zimbabwe National Statistics Agency National Accounts Manager Grown Chirongwe said the performance reflects improved stability and resilience driven by better production conditions and sustained activity across major sectors. Key contributors to the growth included mining and quarrying, manufacturing, finance and insurance, wholesale and retail, trade and agriculture. Sectors benefited from favorable weather, increased investment and policy measures aimed at stabilizing the economy. The International Monetary Fund noted that Zimbabwe's 2025 recovery has been stronger than expected, supported by fiscal reforms, currency management efforts, and rising commodity exports, with positive momentum likely to continue into 2026. Economists have urged cautious optimism, warning that challenges such as inflation, limited external financing, and structural weaknesses remain despite the encouraging headline growth figures. Ghana's Ministry of Finance and the African Export-Import Bank have announced the successful resolution of a $750 million financing facility, marking an important step in strengthening the country's external financing position. In a joint statement, the two parties said the resolution reflects constructive engagement and a shared commitment to maintaining financial stability while supporting Ghana's ongoing economic recovery efforts. The facilities forms part of broader measures aimed at improving liquidity management and easing pressures on the public finances amid Ghana's macroeconomic adjustment program. Officials noted that the agreement reinforces investor confidence and underscores Afreximbank's continued support for Ghana during a challenging economic period. The Ministry of Finance said it remained focused on prudent debt management, fiscal reforms, and collaboration with development partners to ensure sustainable growth and long-term economic resilience. Moving to sports, Angola and Zimbabwe meet on Thursday at the Grand Stade de Marrakech in the crucial second group match at the Total Energies CAF Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2025. Both sides lost their opening fixtures, giving the encounter an early knockout feel in a tightly balanced group. Angola came into the match frustrated after an opening defeat in which they created chances but failed to convert them. Coach Patrice Buemele has called for discipline and efficiency, insisting the team showed positive signs despite the result. Defender Jonathan Batu echoed that view, saying Angola must build on their performance while correcting mistakes, stressing that mental strength will be key under pressure. Zimbabwe, meanwhile, are seeking to bounce back after a late defeat in their opener. Coach Marina Marincia urged his players to stay true to their identity, saying all teams in the group will have a chance if they focus on the present. Captain Marvelous Nakamba said preparations have been intense and fully focused on securing a positive result. Historically, Angola have led the edge in recent meetings, but both teams know Thursday's match could define their tournament hopes. Up next, the weather forecast for the region. That's all for today. Before I conclude, I would like to invite you to watch our upcoming weekly program, Roundup. Thanks for tuning in, and goodbye. Hello, you're watching Pulse of Africa, and I'm Tinsai Gabriel, your host for today's roundup discussion. Regional integration is at the heart of Africa's development vision, and today the idea of regional integration has moved from vision to policy, with promises of free trade, shared infrastructure, and deeper political cooperation. From the African Continental Free Trade Area to the regional blocs like IGAD, ECOWAS, SADC, and EAC, African states are increasingly looking beyond borders in search of shared growth, security, and mobility. But what does regional integration really mean in practice? Years after these institutions were formed, key questions remain. How integrated is Africa in practice? What has worked and what hasn't? And what needs to change? Today, we unpack the realities behind the vision. We examine how far Africa has come on regional integration. Zelalem Ibeltal, Sabit Loal, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
When we talk about regional integration in Africa, what does it actually mean in practice? What does it mean to governments? What does it mean to citizens?
As you said in your opening, there are so many regional organizations in Africa. As you said, SADC, for example, in South Africa, Southern African Development Community, COMESA in Eastern and Southern Africa, Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, IGAD in the Horn of Africa and in the Greater Eastern Africa. The abbreviation stands for Intergovernmental Authority on Development. And we do have ECOWAS in Western Africa, Economic Community of Western Africa. And there are so many regional organizations in Africa. And as far as I'm concerned, these organizations are contributing a lot for regional integration, for promoting trade, for promoting peace and security, stability in the respective regions. We can see what ECOWAS is doing right now. ECOWAS is doing a lot to make sure that member countries of ECOWAS are abide by democratic norms and principles. And we can see what IGAD is doing in the Horn of Africa and in the Greater Eastern Africa. So I believe regional organizations in Africa are playing their part in promoting peace and security and trade as well. Trade is crucial for propelling economic growth and for satisfying the needs and demands of peoples of Africa. So promoting trade by itself is a great deal for those regional organizations. And the other significance of regional organization is, of course, promoting peace and security. Peace and security in many parts of Africa is being threatened, for example, in Eastern Africa because of different insurgent groups, because of the prevalence of terrorist groups like Al-Shabaab, the insurgent group. Many parts of the Eastern Africa are being affected, for example. So the base of Al-Shabaab is in Somalia. It is spreading to neighboring countries. There are also other terrorist groups in different parts of Africa. If we see, for example, the terrorist organization which is based in Nigeria, Boko Haram insurgent group. The base is in Nigeria, in particular in northeast part of Nigeria. But from that country, this terrorist organization is waging different kinds of heinous terrorist attack in different parts of West Africa. What I'm trying to say is collective effort and combined effort to tackle those kinds of crimes. Organized crime is very much essential, and the significance of those regional organizations like COMESA, SADC, IGAD, and other regional organization can never be overestimated. And we can also see the significance of this regional organization in fighting pandemics.
Do you believe these organizations have achieved concrete results?
Yeah, that's $1 million question. I mean, they have done a lot, they have contributed a lot, like I explained earlier on, but there is a long way to go to make sure that the peoples of the region, peoples of the respective region are benefited from these organizations. But we can see positive moves in different parts of the continent. For example, in Eastern Africa, in Southern Africa, almost in all parts of Africa, we can see that regional organizations are contributing for promoting trade, for promoting peace and security, for fighting pandemics. For example, we see that there was Ebola virus some few years ago in Africa, in particular in West Africa. So to fight against that Ebola virus with the task and with the responsibilities of countries of the region, countries of West Africa, these organizations have tried their best to make sure that Ebola virus was eliminated. Recently, we can see there is Marburg virus, in many parts of Africa. Many countries in Africa are engulfed by this new virus, and there needs to be collective efforts. So the conclusion to which my explanation leads me is to say that these regional organizations are contributing a lot, but much remains to be done.
So Sabit, do you have anything to add to Zalalam's point?
Sure. Thank you so much for being here. Yes, raised a lot of questions, and as we know that we have a lot of regional integration. I mean, we have a lot of regional blocks. So Africa doesn't suffer from lack of organizations, and the mandate for this organization or regional integrations is to create peace and economic integration among the member states in these different regional blocks. So I can attest to the progress that has been made by the East African community. If you move from Nairobi, Kenya, to South Sudan, you can go without any visa, as long as you have your national ID. You can pass through the border of Kenya to Uganda, to Rwanda, and to South Sudan. And this is a very much impact that we are seeing that is happening from the Eastern African. And I'm sure that ECOWAS is the second to the East African communities. It has been doing a lot, especially to stabilize the situation when the political stability occurs. So they come up with a solution to tackle the situation. That is the meaning of cooperation or integration among these countries.
Free movement of people is also a key goal for regional integration. Why has it been so difficult to implement across the region?
All right, Tensai. You have brought an awesome idea. People-to-people relation is the central idea of Pan-Africanism in the African Union. And those regional organizations, be it COMESA or ECOWAS or IGAD, they have something to do. They have much in common with the continental organization, African Union, and they also embrace the idea of Pan-Africanism. The dream and the aspiration of Pan-Africanism is to make sure that peoples of Africa, peoples of African descent come into one, come together. So people-to-people relation is very much fundamental. And those regional organizations like the one we mentioned earlier on, COMESA, ECOWAS, SADC, and others are in fact helping peoples of Africa to communicate, to come together. For example, if you see COMESA is a regional organization which is engaging in Eastern and Southern Africa, which comprises of like 21 member states, and COMESA has been designing policies, strategies, and frameworks to help member countries to integrate in trade, to integrate through infrastructure, to integrate through people-to-people relations.
Africa has no shortage of regional organizations. Do you believe these organizations have achieved concrete results, or do you think it's just mostly paperwork and frameworks?
It is both.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the blocks have done something tangible.
Can you give me examples where they've?
Okay, like I said before, in the East African communities, there is smooth trade among East African communities, be it people movement and the goods. You can ship your products from one part of the East African countries to the other without cost. Without border issues. Without border issues. Tax, yeah. So you can move freely and nobody can question a lot as long as you have your national ID. Yeah. So this one is a visible or tangible thing that every country can attest to this. Mm-hmm. So this is what I can say.
For example, ECOWAS is a regional organization in West Africa, Economic Community of Western African States, and there are many member states in the bloc. So ECOWAS has designed a framework, and that framework is Economic Trade Liberalization Scheme. Through that scheme, member countries of ECOWAS have the opportunity to sell their products and goods without tariff. And this is benefiting countries of the region. For example, Ghana, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal.
Already
Burkina
in practice?
As well. Yes, in practice, yeah. It's on the ground. For example, Ghanaian companies are able to sell their products, their agricultural and industrial products through that scheme. And Cote d'Ivoire, for example, the major producer, one of the main producer of cocoa product, and cocoa, it's very much important for producing chocolate.
Yes.
And I think you are fond of it,
Yeah.
chocolate. Yeah, so those organizations like ECOWAS are helping their member countries to ease the business of doing trade. And the other example can be COMESA, Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa. And COMESA has also its own trade framework that enable member countries to trade with each other without having sophisticated custom procedures. So those regional organizations are helping their member countries to trade with each other with ease.
So I want to move the discussion down from policy to practice. And recently I was reporting live at the IGAD Media Awards that happened in Addis Ababa. It was the 3rd edition, I believe. Zali was also there. Yeah. And I feel like it was a really good representation of people-to-people integration. And they brought journalists from all over the Horn of Africa. And it was also about shaping a shared regional narrative. And I thought it was really important. And do you believe these kinds of regional initiatives that show, integration, working at a human, practical level is better than sometimes just policy making and rhetoric?
Yeah, I think it's always good to foster people-to-people relation. The idea of Pan-Africanism, the very dream and aspiration of African unity can be successful and can be achieved through people-to-people relation, and it all starts with people-to-people relation. And it's great that you experienced that kind of integration last time during the IGAD Media Award. The purpose of that IGAD Media Award was, of course, to recognize those storytellers and journalists who contributed to change the narratives of Africa in terms of climate change. Africa is hit hard by climate change, the impact of climate change, but its contribution to climate change is very much minimal. And in fact, African countries are doing their best to fight against climate change, the impact of climate change, and that part of the story needs to be covered, and the stories of Africa needs to be covered in nuanced fashion in its entirety. The stories of Africa sometimes are shortened to the stories of conflict and violence. So that kind of program is, I think, very much appreciated because that showed the entirety of African stories. So coming to your specific questions, yes, people-to-people relation is very much vital for Africa, and those regional organizations are enabling this to happen.
What do you identify as obstacles for regional integration today, and what steps need to be taken in order to strengthen them?
As we know that a lot of African organizations, sometimes they depend from the Western country for the funding. So this is where I find that there is a gap. We need to look within ourselves, and whereby member states of each regional bloc can come together and commit in funding. And the other problem that I see is that overlapping membership states from these blocks, because you can find one country being a member from the 2 regional blocks. So a lot of organization, we don't need a lot of organization to solve this problem. We need a few with good system that can implement the decision that are in place.
There are so many reasons with regards to the obstacles for regional organizations in Africa. One of the many obstacles is the political instability in many parts of Africa. For example, we have witnessed the civil war in Sudan, and we have also observed the civil war in Democratic Republic of Congo. In many parts of Africa, there is civil war, conflict, chaos, violence, and all kinds of instability in Africa. So those kind of political instability are the major impediment to the success of the regional organizations. The regional organizations are not working and functioning in vacuum. They are working in soils of Africa. So if the soils of Africa is not stable and is not peaceful, there is no way that those regional organizations continue doing their activities. So one of the factor is political instability that we are witnessing in various parts of Africa. The other factor is, of course, economic disparity. There is economic disparity in many parts of Africa. If you see, for example, a Southern African country, there is a regional organization there called SADC, Southern African Development Community. It comprises of many Southern African nations, but there is economic disparity there. For example, if you see the economy of South Africa, one of the wealthiest nations in Africa, and Malawi, there is a huge disparity. The GDP of South Africa is 400 billion US dollar, and the GDP of Malawi is not more than 15 billion US dollar, 15 billion US dollar. You see the difference. There is a huge gap in terms of economies. So economic disparity prevailed in many parts of Africa is, of course, the other reason that can be mentioned as a setback for the success of regional organizations. And we can also talk about overlapping of regional organizations. I think Sabit has been talking about this issue, overlapping of regional organization. This is a situation whereby countries become member of different regional organizations.
Are you skeptical about where regional integration is going to go in a couple of years, or are you optimistic that it's going to bring real change to Africa?
Yeah, I believe that I believe in change, because change is the only thing that doesn't change. If the leaders change the way they do the things, I think there will a lot of things will change in the regions or in the blocks, because one of the reason that is holding them back, because you have mentioned a lot of points. What I can mention is just one or two, and it is institutional independence, whereby this bloc or African regional blocks doesn't depend only on themselves. They depend from the Western countries for the help or for the funding, and this is where I find a very big mistake, because we have a lot of resources in our continent, so there's no need for us to go and ask for funding from the Western countries or international organizations. So this is one of the reasons that hold this institution back.
As Sabit beautifully explained, change is natural, and we're going to see change, I believe. The only constant thing in the world is change itself. So we will see change in African integration. I am realistic, not skeptical, not optimistic, but realistic in terms of African integration, in terms of the realization of Pan-Africanism. We have witnessed, for example, the implementation of African Continental Free Trade Area. A lot remains to be done, but much has been done over the past few years in terms of African Continental Free Trade Area, the largest free trade area in the entire world, which sought to unite peoples of 1.3 billion Africans. So we are witnessing some positive developments in many parts of Africa, and we are witnessing leaders from Africa, presidents and prime ministers, promoting African agenda without any sort of confusion and without any sort of frustration. So we are witnessing positive developments in terms of trade, in terms of leadership, in terms of politics, in terms of people-to-people relations. So African integration, I would say, is not far.
Well, Zelalem, Sabit, thank you for joining me for today's roundup discussion. Regional integration in Africa is a journey, not a destination. While challenges remain from political disagreements to infrastructure gaps, the progress we see in security, cooperation, cultural exchanges, and regional initiatives like visa-free travel shows that collaboration is possible. Africa is moving forward, step by step, building the frameworks, trust, and connections that will ultimately bring the continent closer together. Thank you for joining us in this discussion and for staying engaged with the stories that shape our shared African future.